I hadn't asked for much. Just dinner, some pasta, maybe a little chocolate cake and my son at the table. No parties, no fuss. Just Nolan, Erica, and a few familiar faces from the neighborhood. Instead, I got applause I didn't understand, and a son who smiled like he was presenting an award. "We're moving into Mom's apartment," Nolan said, raising his glass. "It's what Erica deserves." The room froze just for a second, and then it clinked with wine glasses and polite laughter. Erica angled her phone toward me, camera already recording. "We're so grateful, Irene. Not every mother would be this generous." I stared at them. At the flicker of candlelight on Erica's gold necklace. At Nolan's face, calm and prepared, like he'd practiced this moment in front of a mirror. My fork hovered midair. My throat tightened. I nodded. Not because I agreed, but because I didn't know what else to do. Erica leaned forward across the table. "We'll start prepping the nursery right away. Maybe a fresh coat of paint. Soft grays, a touch of light wood." She giggled. I lifted my wine glass, brought it to my lips, and let the room keep going without me. They had decided, declared, announced it in front of people I barely knew. People who clapped because they thought it was sweet, thought it was love, thought I was lucky, but I wasn't. I was being erased. I watched Nolan wrap his arm around Erica's shoulder, watched her open Pinterest on her phone, flipping through images of cribs and curtains, as if the apartment was already hers, as if I was the one passing through. I smiled, not because I felt anything close to joy, but because something inside me had already started to shift, and I needed them to believe I hadn't noticed. Not yet. Before the entrees even arrived, Erica handed me a gift bag, stuffed with pink tissue paper, fluffed up like a wedding centerpiece. "Open it," she said, her eyes wide and sweet, like she'd just invented kindness. Inside was a tiny white onesie, neatly folded, the words, "Best Grandma Ever," printed across the chest in gold lettering. Surprised, she set her hand resting on Nolan's. "We thought it was time." "Time," I repeated, still staring at the fabric in my lap. "To plan the nursery," she chirped. "Right, Nolan." He nodded without looking at me, especially since we'll have more space soon. It came so easily to them, like this was a conversation we'd been having for months, like I had nodded and smiled somewhere along the way, and they'd just carried the idea forward. Erica launched into her vision-neutral tones, natural light, nothing too babyish. "More elevated," she said. She'd already picked out the crib, and she wanted to turn my sewing room into a soft, quiet space. "We'll let you visit, of course," she added. "You can still keep your coffee plants on the balcony if you want." I blinked. "Coffee plants." She waved her hand, dismissing the slip. "I mean, your herbs. The ones you water every morning. The ones I planted with Marcus. They didn't even know what was in the dirt, but they were already moving in." Nolan smiled at me, then wide and expectant. "It's going to be perfect. Everything's falling into place." I smiled back, the onesie still resting on my knees, and said nothing. I didn't eat much after that. The cake was too sweet, the candles too loud. I left before they brought the check, claiming I had a headache. Erica offered to call a ride. I said I needed the air. I walked the 16 blocks home in heels I hadn't worn in years. Every step reminded me what silence felt like when it's the only defense you have left. By the time I unlocked my door, I already knew I wasn't included. I was overwritten. And that wasn't an accident. I didn't sleep that night. My apartment, my quiet, familiar apartment, felt unfamiliar, like someone had rearranged the walls while I was gone. I kept hearing Erica's voice in my head. "We'll let you visit. You can keep your plants." I stood in the kitchen with my hand on the counter and realized I didn't feel safe. Not unsafe, not exactly, but something had shifted. I opened the hallway closet around midnight. The one with the old file boxes stacked behind my winter coats. I hadn't touched them in years. Dust had settled into the edges of the cardboard. Each label was written in Marcus's handwriting. The folders were organized by category: home taxes, medical. I flipped through them slowly, not really sure what I was looking for, until I found it. A manila envelope creased at the corners marked Hospital 2021. Inside, discharge paperwork, prescriptions, insurance forms, and a power of attorney notarized, dated, and bearing my signature. I remembered the pneumonia. I remembered the IV, the fever, the way Nolan hovered by the window. I remembered him handing me a stack of papers and saying, "Just sign so I can deal with the insurance." I had signed, without reading. My hands went cold. I texted my lawyer Naomi, knowing it was late. "Just one line, does this still count?" I attached a photo of the document. Her reply came before morning. "If you didn't revoke it, yes. We need to talk today." The way she said "we" made my stomach knot. When I walked into her office, she was already flipping through a copy I'd emailed. Technically, she said, "Your son has authority if you're deemed medically unfit." She looked up. "All it would take is one note. One doctor saying you seemed confused, forgetful. It wouldn't give him everything, but it would be enough to cause legal delays. Possibly even lock down your assets until a review is complete." My mouth went dry. "He wouldn't do that," I whispered. She didn't answer, and that silence told me everything I needed to hear. She didn't text, didn't knock, just rang the bell like she had every right to be there. I opened the door halfway, just enough to see the gift bag in one hand and a cup of iced coffee in the other. "Hazelnut cream, extra ice?" Erica said, smiling like a child offering a peace treaty. "Thought you could use a treat." I didn't reach for it. "You've been quiet," she added. We were a little worried. Her voice dipped into that practiced softness, concern, laced with expectation. She held out the bag. "It's vitamins. Prenatals." I blinked. We weren't going to say anything yet, she continued, hand on her stomach like there was already something to cradle, but after the dinner, it just felt right. "You're pregnant?" I asked. She nodded, eyes glistening just enough to catch the light. "It meant so much that you gave us the apartment. We feel like it's a sign." She stepped inside when I turned to set the bag on the counter. I didn't invite her, but she came anyway, walking straight to the kitchen, like it was already hers. She opened the fridge, grabbed a sparkling water, cracked it open, and drank deeply without checking the label. No one, that early along, that cautious, forgets to check for caffeine. She moved through the apartment like a designer walking through a blank canvas. She pointed to the living room. "We'll probably put the crib here. Or maybe in your sewing room. Babies need quiet, not clutter." She paused in the hallway and turned to me. "Before you get tired of the stairs, right?" I didn't answer. I just watched her fingers trail along the walls like she was measuring her territory. "When did the doctor confirm the pregnancy?" I asked. She blinked fast. "It's early. Too early for that." No, of course she did. Later, when she went to the bathroom, her purse sat half open on the kitchen counter. I saw it before I even meant to look, a folded sonogram photo already framed. I'd seen the same image on a pregnancy app last month. Same shape. Same angle. Same lie. She wandered while I stood at the stove, pretending to fuss with the kettle. Not because I wanted coffee, I'd already had 2 cups, but because I needed something to do while Erica cataloged my life like she was prepping a listing. "Do you ever use this drawer?" she asked, already halfway through it. "It sticks a little. Maybe we could swap out the hardware?" I didn't respond. I just measured grounds into the filter. She drifted to the bookshelf in the corner, running her hand across the edge. "You know, I think we can donate this. It's a little dated, but someone might find it charming." My chest tightened. Marcus built that bookshelf in the winter of '94. We'd just moved in. The heater was unreliable, so we'd worn thick socks and hammered in silence, letting the wood glue dry overnight while we huddled on the floor drinking coffee from chipped mugs. He carved a tiny heart into the back panel. No one could see it but us. Erica had her back to me now, still talking, still walking. She opened the hallway closet, peered into the bathroom, commented on the color of the tile, like she was auditioning for a home show. When she finally set her purse down again, I noticed the folder inside. Something thick and yellowed with corners peeking out. When she left the room to stretch her legs, I glanced in. Not because I wanted to snoop, but because something had already been taken from me, and I needed to know how far they'd gone. Inside were printed floor plans of my apartment, marked up with notes, open up entry, neutral palette, replace lighting fixtures. Beneath that, a Zillow estimate circled in red pen. The total higher than I'd guessed. I took a photo with my phone. Quiet. Quick. I replaced everything before she came back. She smiled like nothing had happened and asked if she should bring Nolan next time. He wants to measure the space, she said, sipping her water. For resale value, if we ever need to upgrade. I nodded slowly and reached for my mug. They weren't moving in. They were staging it for someone else. I made my first call the next morning. Naomi answered before the second ring. I told her I was ready to revoke everything. Power of attorney health proxies. Account access any tether Nolan still had to my name. Do it now, she said. Don't wait until they think you're reacting. By noon, the paperwork was filed. My signature was sharp, deliberate. I even practiced it twice before signing like I needed to remind myself who I was. Next, I called Iris. We hadn't spoken in months, maybe a year, but she didn't ask why I was calling. Just listened. I need to sell, I told her. Quietly. No listing, no photos, no interference. Private network, she said. Cash buyers. Leave it with me. She gave me a list of towns that didn't show up in hashtags. Places with lakes and retired mechanics and women who owned dogs instead of keeping husbands. I chose a cabin 2 states away with peeling paint and 2 bedrooms. The kitchen was ugly and the yard was uneven, but it was mine. No one had ever called dibs on it. The seller agreed to cash. We didn't haggle. I began my departure the way a person might quit a bad job slowly without making noise. I left a half-packed suitcase by the hallway bench. Let Erica think I was preparing for a short trip. Posted a casserole recipe to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a strawberry, the kind she'd see and assume I still cared about dinner plans. Meanwhile, I scheduled a home inspection. I moved my legal files into a lockbox. Changed the emergency contact forms in the building office, not to Nolan, not to family, to Iris. I told the superintendent I might be going away for medical recovery. He nodded slowly and didn't press. That was good. I needed people to believe I was tired, confused, maybe even fading. Let them think I was soft. Let them think they still had time. I was already 2 steps ahead and about to be gone before they knew what they'd lost. The knock came late, almost dusk. Sharp, fast, impatient. I didn't have to look to know it was Nolan. Mom. He called open the door. I stayed where I was, hands folded in my lap, breathing steady. The key turned next. I heard it jiggle. Catch, then stop. A pause. Then he tried again, harder this time. I had changed the locks 2 days earlier. The building manager processed the request within the hour, no questions asked. There was a silence outside the kind that hums with disbelief. Then the knocking returned louder now. I know you're in there, he said. We need to talk. I didn't respond. We found out he continued, his voice closer to the door now. Iris. The realtor. You're selling the place. He scoffed. You're sabotaging your own family. I stood behind the hallway wall out of sight, listening to my son speak like I was a tenant overstaying a lease. You can't just do this, he said, quieter now. You're not well. You're acting irrational. Then came the soft sound of paper sliding across tile. I waited until his footsteps faded. Then I picked it up. A white envelope. Thick. Formal. Inside was a letter from a law office I didn't recognize. A petition for transitional occupancy review, flagged with a note pending potential medical guardianship claim. My fingers went numb. I called Naomi. She picked up before the second ring again. I read the highlighted section aloud. She didn't sound surprised. "They're escalating," she said, "trying to establish grounds before the sale finalizes. This isn't just about the apartment anymore. They want control. They're not getting it. I know. But we need to lock everything down today." That night, I sat at the table with my documents spread out like battle plans. I scanned copies, backed them to cloud folders, organized screenshots into labeled folders. Proof timeline power of attorney revoked. Then I recorded myself reading a statement about every financial decision I'd made in the last 2 months. Clear voice, no stumbles. If they wanted to paint me as incompetent, I was going to make sure the record said otherwise. The sale closed on a Thursday afternoon. No fanfare. No goodbyes. Just a quiet confirmation email from Iris with a PDF attached, final transfer of ownership completed, funds deposited. I opened it, stared at the line with my signature beside the buyer's. Then I closed my laptop and slid it across the table. That chapter was over. I didn't cry. I didn't feel victorious either. Just steady. Like I'd been holding a burning rope and finally let go. The next morning I met with Naomi and slid a folder across her desk. Inside was everything: bank statements, deeds, my life insurance, the cabin purchase agreement, a sealed letter. She flipped through it all in silence, then looked up. "You're sure?" "Yes," I said. "I want it in a trust. No loopholes, no room to contest." We drafted the revisions together. Every asset I had, apartment sale proceeds, retirement savings, insurance payouts, was moved into a community endowment. A fund. For women like me. Women who gave too much, stayed too long, and were nearly erased by the people they raised. I called it the Quiet Exit Fund. Every penny goes to helping women rebuild, I said. Housing, legal aid, therapy. And Daniel and Erica. Explicitly disinherited, she confirmed. We've also included a no contest clause. If they try to challenge it, they lose access to everything, even sentimental items. I nodded. A final line was added to the will I leave behind: peace, not apologies. That evening, I made myself dinner in the cabin for the first time. Just roasted vegetables and coffee in a chipped mug, but it tasted like calm. When the phone buzzed, I didn't flinch. Another message from Nolan. Long, angry, self-pitying. I didn't read it. I forwarded it to Naomi, added it to the file, then blocked his number. That was the last thread. Everything they thought they were owed was gone. Not taken from them, just removed. Quietly, legally, permanently. And by the time they realized what they'd lost, I would be somewhere else, untouched by the noise they left behind. They pulled up just after 6. A silver SUV creeping up the gravel path, like it had something to confess. I was already at the window, lights off, watching from behind the curtains I'd hung myself. Nolan stepped out, first hair-combed blazer, too formal for the trees around us. Ashley followed, heels sinking slightly into the dirt, carrying a white bag in one hand and a wine bottle in the other. The label read, "Forgiveness," in cursive. They walked to the porch, glanced around like they were checking for witnesses, then knocked. Mom, Nolan said, calm but tight. "We just want to talk." I didn't move. Ashley pressed closer to the door, voice trembling like she'd practiced it. "You're shutting out your grandchild," she cried. "Is that what you want?" The lie tasted different, now more desperate than cruel. She wasn't showing. Her makeup was too perfect, her body too casual. There was no child. There never had been. They stayed for 22 minutes. Ashley knocked 3 more times. Nolan tried the door handle once. I stayed still, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. When they finally walked away, They left the wine bottle on the top step. I opened the door only after their engine faded into silence. The bottle was heavy, chilled from a cooler, probably meant to feel like a gift. I carried it to the sink, pulled the cork, and poured it down the drain in one long, unbroken stream. Forgiveness, they'd called it. But forgiveness isn't something you gift wrap after gutting someone's life. It isn't a performance for the neighbors or a post with curated hashtags. It's what happens after truth. And they hadn't brought any. I rinsed the bottle, dropped it into the recycling, and washed my hands slowly, carefully, until the smell of their cologne was gone from the glass. Back at the table, my phone buzzed once. A final message from Nolan. "You win. Hope it was worth losing your family." I stared at it, then pressed one button. Block. The mornings come early here, cooler, softer. I wake with the sun and tend to the herbs I planted in mismatched pots behind the cabin mint thyme and a few stubborn peppers that might never grow, but still try. I talk to them sometimes, not out loud, just with my hands in the dirt, steady and sure. Afternoons, I walk the loop around the lake, past the same 5 mailboxes, and the same sleepy dog that never barks. I cook, simply. Read without checking the clock. And in the evenings, I sit on the porch with strong black coffee in my hands and watch the sky change color. I haven't looked at my voicemail in days. But today, out of habit, more than curiosity, I checked. One message. From a number I didn't recognize, but I knew the tone the second it played. "You win?" Nolan said, voice clipped and flat. "Hope it was worth losing your family." No hello. No apology. Just the kind of bitterness that comes when manipulation fails. I didn't flinch. I didn't play it twice. I didn't save it either. I deleted it and his number with one quiet motion, the way you'd close a drawer on something broken. Later that evening, I received a letter from the young couple who bought my apartment. A handwritten thank you, neat cursive on cream paper. They'd moved in 2 weeks ago, newly married, no children yet, just a cat named Peanut, and a dream of starting fresh. They wrote, "We kept the bookshelf. It's beautiful. My husband thought about painting it, but I told him it felt too loved to change." I folded the letter and set it on the table, smiling for the first time that day. Marcus's shelf was still standing. All the years, all the hours kept by strangers who didn't ask for anything but space to build something honest. I sipped my coffee slowly, the steam curling into the evening air, and listened to the wind move through the trees. Not silence, not loneliness, just peace, unapologetic, and mine.